failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. Now, it's not like I was failing or there was like a specific failure that I had faced. I think it's the general idea that whatever it is, a failure, a mental barrier, the preconceived notion that I can't or that I, am unable to, that will never overtake me if internally my desire to succeed is strong enough.
Failing is not the problem here. It's when we make those failures permanent, that becomes the problem. So I don't want to hear about only your successes without hearing about your failures. It's a journey forged by crucibles, battles, and messy processes. Here, we honor your pain, then we celebrate your triumph. Your truth is what's inspirational. So welcome to the Eternal Lessons Podcast. Okay, welcome, Alma Cooper. Finally, it's great to see you.
You as well.
And thank you so much for agreeing to come here on Eternal Lessons Podcast.
Of course.
Yeah, so just quickly just to explain here, Eternal Lessons, what we do is we focus on lessons that you have collected over the course of your life, and we are deeply interested in sharing those lessons with the world so that we can do some uplift and just give people a little bit of calm and ease, that it's always a process and we can share the lessons that we've learned through our process. And most importantly, I don't want people on here who are like, they've already done everything. I want people on here that are currently doing the thing. And Alma, you are doing it. So really, really, we appreciate you for being here today.
Of course. I'm so glad. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll do is introduce you. I know how weird it is to ask you to introduce yourself. So I'll take a stab at it. If I miss anything, feel free to correct, or if I get something wrong, feel free to correct me.
Yeah.
So you hail from Michigan, where you competed in Michigan and won Miss Michigan.
Yep.
Which now you're Miss USA.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Just to start there. So we're here with Miss USA, Alma Cooper.
Cool.
You went to high school in Michigan, then you matriculated through West Point. That's where I met you, and I got to observe you and watch you do some incredible things within the Corps of Cadets. You studied math while you were there. You were in the top of your class. You did a lot of hard leadership assignments. And then you said, hey, I want to go pursue higher education. You applied and competed nationally to win a Stanford Knights-Hennessy Scholarship. And that's where you're currently there studying statistics.
Yes.
Okay, so you're studying stats at Stanford for 2 years, and I know you have a focus on data science. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. All right. Since you arrived at Stanford, you have been so involved in the community where you currently are. You even did some cheerleading, or you still do some cheerleading for the team. Okay, that's awesome. And you decided to go compete and do something that was a lifelong desire of yours. And because I know you did some pageantry growing up, and now you are the reigning Miss USA. I'm sure I missed a lot because you do a lot. You run a lot. That's why I wore my New York City.
I love it. I saw that.
Yeah, and I know you told me that you're running the New York City full marathon. So I have a little bit more muscle than you, so I can't last a marathon, but you can. Yeah. So super excited. And I think this is your fourth or fifth marathon.
This will be my fourth.
Oh my gosh. I guess we could start with that. Why do you like running so much?
Yeah. Well, I honestly think a lot of it stems from my family and my mom. So when I was growing up, my dad was military. And so a lot of the time it would be myself, my sister, and my mom. And I mean, my mom used running as like an outlet in a lot of different ways. It got her a scholarship to go to college, coming from, not very fortunate family. She knew that running was her outlet to higher education and opportunity. And so it was like her passion and something that also gave her purpose. But then growing up and then having my sister and I, it was also an outlet to just be by yourself in the midst of being a mom and working and, having, a husband deployed. And me as her daughter, she always called me chicle, like gum in Spanish, because I'd always stick to her. And so she would go for these runs, and I'd be like, "Well, mom, I wanna go too," you know? And so it kinda was like, well, as I got older, we, ran to the stop sign, and then, she would say, "Okay, we'll run a mile." And then, it would be, "Okay, I'm gonna go, and when it gets to the 10-minute mark, then you can go, so when I turn around, I can see you." And then I started run by myself on the road, so I feel like running to me has always been like a family, it's been like a really close tie to my family, but then also for me, like, it's pushed me, it's always allowed me to have, like, that lifelong challenge, which I think, is a gift to find something and have the courage to wanna be bad at it, to have the courage to wanna learn, to have the courage to be humbled by it sometimes. That is a gift, truly. And once
Yeah,
I found that thing where I was like, "Man, I wanna do this forever,"
yeah,
like, not just while I'm in high school, not just on the track team, but push myself as far as I can go in it. I kinda became chicle to running.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the evolution of your passion to run,
Mhm.
particularly with your mom. So just to
Yeah.
focus there a little bit, what did you learn during those moments
Mhm.
that you were like attached to your mom in
Yeah.
those running situations? Is there anything significant that stands out that now it you carry with you and is vivid in like the
Yes.
back of your mind, like this is what I learned from this experience?
Yes, I would say, I remember particularly, I mean, always just running with her, like, growing up on the street, but I remember when I started to ask her to, like, competitively help me. My mom coached, track and cross country, at the high school level, for a state championship cross country team, male and female. And so she, has done the sport at, an all-American level in college, but then also coached athletes to become, All-Americans, Division I athletes, state champions. And so, humbly, I was like, "Hey, I'd love to get some coaching in my 2 mile in particular." I remember asking her this while I was at West Point. And we would go to the track and, she would put me through a hard, 800, multiple 800s, very little rest in between workout. And it's summer in Michigan and it gets hot. And I'm out there, and it's just me and my mom in this blazing hot track, and I'm doing these 800s, and I'm, either hitting the times or I'm just below the time that I need, and you get frustrated. And it's like, as you look to your mom, I'm looking to my mom like, "You got this, honey." And it's like, "No, get up, let's go." And so I feel like growing up, having someone in your corner who identifies your potential and your talent, but is also there to
Mm,
give you that hard truth of, "Get up, let's go. This is where you grow." You're not gonna grow if I give you these times to hit and, you can cross through the finish line and kinda, check your phone and, be all good and then get back on the line and skip off and do this time again. If you're gonna grow when you're being pushed, and I feel like that is a motif in my family
yeah,
as well as my dad. But I think that is what breeds excellence. I wouldn't want someone in my corner who's gonna give me easy things to achieve. Like if you identify talent and potential and you push someone to do that, regardless of your age, I think that's something to celebrate because not a lot of people have that.
no, I love that.
Yeah.
So this makes me think of a story about you.
Mhm.
You won't remember this.
Mhm.
I remember this.
Mhm.
It was a vivid memory for me. We were at West Point. It was your cow year.
Mhm.
It was really late at night, into the morning, about 1 a.m. We were doing the Norwegian foot march, and
Mhm.
this is when I knew you were about that life.
Yeah. Mm.
I think you ran the whole 18 miles. It was like 18, I forget
Yep.
the distance,
Yeah.
something like that. It
Yeah.
was 18 miles. I was moving, with a mentee of mine. If you remember, he was a regimental commander at USMA, in Hinton for First Reg, yeah. So he and I were doing it together, and we started fast, and then, I started cramping up, so we slowed down a little bit. And I see you just, pass by us, and you have this small frame and you got this big ruck on your back and you're like running up Stony.
Yeah.
Actually we're coming down Stony, but the backside is
Yeah.
still, like, very steep,
See
and you're, like, running this thing, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, who is that?" He's like, "Oh, that's Alma,
Yeah, yeah.
she's great, she's gonna be a top leader in the Corps next year," and that was the first time I was like, "Oh man, like, she is a studette." So, I think a lot of these things that, your mom instilled in you very early definitely radiates, from you as I watched you, grow through West Point, and even now, the things that you're currently doing with the marathon training, so good on you and your
I
family.
appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was great. You inspire me. I wasn't catching you, though.
No. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your upbringings because I think it's very important, and I know that and I'm talking particularly in high school. Um, what we go through shapes who we are, who we become, and I think it's important to recognize that, and I know you know that. So back in high school, can you think of a time something that either a crucible experience, something hard, demanding, maybe you failed at something, you just plummeted. Could you think of something in high school that happened to you that just fired you up and changed who you were fundamentally? You're like, not gonna happen again, or that's what I want to do. You became clear.
Yeah, I'm actually it's so funny that you bring this up because next week I'm going to my high school that I graduated from to be like the homecoming like grand marshal.
Heck
They
yeah.
asked
Yeah.
me to be the grand marshal, and I'm like, "Me?" Like, that was crazy, but,
Yeah.
anyways, thinking just back, it's brought up a lot of memories of my time in high school, and I'll get to speak to a lot of the students at an assembly, and just one of the things that I remember so vividly was I switched high schools, very, like, kinda suddenly, between my sophomore year middle of my sophomore year, I went from the high school and, like, the district that my childhood home resided in to a school that I graduated from that was just outside, so a neighboring school. And there were a few differences, main differences between the school district that I lived in and then the school district that I graduated from. One was that I a lot of times was the only brown girl in a lot of my classes and in just my grade. And it's weird growing up in a very small rural town in the Midwest. You kind of stick out like a sore thumb
Yeah.
in that, but it kind of was something that my parents really invited and wanted me to be challenged in because it's not always that you're going to be in a room full of people who are like you, look like you, come from the same background as you, believe the same things as you. And so they really saw it as a form of development for me. But a moment that really kind of turned into a huge life lesson for me was I switched schools middle of my sophomore year just because of some issues with the administration at the school district that I lived in. And when I got there, I found out that my new school was going to play my old school in the district championship for volleyball. And played volleyball, my whole life from like middle school, all throughout high school. And so I was a junior at the time, and it was a home game at my new school. And I mean, talk about standing room only. I mean, the gymnasium was full of people. We had a massive student section, and the school's only about 5 minutes down the road from us. So my old school, people are bussing in. The school had buses full of students that once were my classmates on the opposing team, sitting in the away student section. And so you just have all of these conflicting emotions of challenges that I went through with people who were my peers, but maybe we didn't get along at my old school. I've got a new set of friends. I've got, people on the other side of the net that I know. I've got people in the stands at my new school who love me. Like,
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was all kinds of relational ties in that gym. And it was like, whether you're at my new school or you're at my old school, and you hear the word Alma, you know who that is. You know who you're looking at on the other side of the net. Um, and so we went in volleyball, you win best out of five, and we went to 5 sets. And I remember just that feeling of the first serve, looking across net, and that whistle blows, and it's just like you can feel the ground shaking because again, it's standing room only. And everyone wants to win, but I want to win on a deeper level. Like, this is personal
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was a vivid memory that I have because I think in life, even to this day, I have times where I would relate similar to that. How do you respond in a high pressure, high stakes environment when people want you to lose personally and you want to win on a personal level? And I feel like that just taught me like how important it is to be grounded, like you can't focus on all of these exterior factors. You have to be so focused on every point, on your teammates, on what you're getting from the coach every time out. Like you have to think so granularly about what is in front of you and silence out a lot of the noise, all of the, politics and the peanut gallery. Got to get very granular with your moves and your thoughts, because if you get caught up in the outside, the exterior factors, like you will never be able to accomplish what's in front of you, especially in an
Yeah.
environment like that.
So what at that time, like,
Yeah.
what was your mantra? What were you saying to yourself? Because I mean, you're saying, like, block out everything,
hmm
but there's a process that you probably went through to block things out. Like, what were you doing at that?
A lot of what I was telling myself was a quote that my mom tells or would tell me, and she would tell her athletes when she was coaching, and it's that failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. Now, it's not like I was failing or there was like a specific failure that I had faced. I think it's the general idea that whatever it is, a failure, a mental barrier, the preconceived notion that I can't or that I, am unable to, that will never overtake me if internally my desire to succeed is strong enough. And now whatever success you define success as, whether you define success as winning, whether there's a certain amount of points you want to put on the scoreboard, like to me, that mentality of like you have to be so obsessed with what your desired outcome is that nothing and no one can come between you and that. Like I think that is the ultimate mantra that I really resonated with.
I love that. That's helpful. I really appreciate that, and I could think back to moments, in my life where, you're on the X is what I would call it, and you have to perform. And I agree with you. I support that. Like, you gotta get granular. You gotta be locked in and focused in order to deliver the impact that you're looking to deliver. So that's pretty cool. You figured that out so early, because it
Yes.
obviously has helped you throughout your life.
Yes, but I think a large part of that is, like, even giving myself the opportunity to have a moment like that. Like, some people will find themselves, like, so unsure with uncomfortability, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but it is something that, like, you willingly have to choose. Like, you have to choose to put yourself in moments and seek out environments where it's not gonna be a clear-cut path to what you're trying to, have a desired outcome in. And so, like, having the ability to, like, internally say, like, "Yes, I'm going to ask myself to seek out this challenge," I think is a skill that a lot of people miss out on if they don't actively choose that.
Yeah. No,
Mm.
I 100% agree. So in high school, and we won't stay here for long, but I think those are some formative years. And it's important to really understand our return on experience from that time. Can you think of a time during high school where you thought things were over? Like, you're like, "My life is over. I'm not gonna amount to anything. This just ruined me." Because sometimes we think of things in the moment to be worse than what it truly is, but it's just another lesson that we're learning. So is there a point where you're like, my life is over? Can you think of something?
I feel like I kind of felt that again my junior year. I'd switched schools, and the one thing that was also a key differentiating factor in my new school than my old school was the academic rigor. It was just very large step above what I was, learning at in the school district that I was attending. And at this new school, it's not just the academic rigor that's higher, but I mean the kinds of dreams and the hopes of the student body is just, leaps and bounds beyond what I was around. I mean, every year there was a handful of kids who went to Dartmouth and Cornell. A lot of kids went to the University of Michigan. I mean, it just breeded a really awesome academic person, if you go through all K through 12 in the school district. And again, I didn't have that background. A lot of my peers had tutors. A lot of my peers had gotten perfect scores on the SAT, the ACT. And so here I am, maybe top of my class at my old school, now coming into a new environment where the classes are a little bit harder, they're faster paced, and you're still being graded alongside some really excellent individuals. But I would say one time in particular where it really hit me like a truck, like I was in a calculus class, and I got like a either a B minus or a C plus. I was on the brink of a C plus or a B minus, and I really knew how hard it would hit me if I got a C plus in this class. And I was getting ready to go to a place like West Point. I'm asking myself to do calculus, and I know I'm going to have to do calculus and multivariable and all these things in higher education, but here I am struggling to do it in high school. And so I remember I took my final exam, and I think I ended with a C plus, and I just was like, "That's it. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
do with whatever school let me in, or take a gap year. I don't know what I'm gonna do." But I feel like what renewed my confidence, or what kind of gave me the momentum to say, like, okay, this is temporary, how am I going to respond to this, was I talked to my parents about it, and they were like, well, I know you got this grade, we can't change that, but let's try and focus on what's next. You want to take the ACT or the SAT, and let's show your abilities in that realm. And so they got me a tutor, and for about 6 weeks, just on the dot, every like Tuesday and Thursday, I would sit down for about an hour and a half with my tutor after, a full day of summer practices for volleyball, and sit down and just drill question after question after question after question. And I think that not only like showed me like, okay, this is how I respond to something that made me uncomfortable, was hard, I wasn't good at. I don't shy away from it. Like, I lean into it. And I
Yeah.
feel like that really instilled a lot in me.
No, that's awesome. You actually triggered a thought that quickly came to my mind when I was at West Point as a TAC officer. Of course, you're surrounded by high performers like yourself who are the best coming from their high schools, and they're integrating into this culture of giants. Everyone's a giant, and they're comparing and stuff like that. There's this uh I think it was his plebe year, in fact. Nope, actually it was his yearling year, because he had gotten a little comfortable, getting really good grades. And he had gotten all A's his plebe year, and then his yearling year still all A's, but there's an assignment he got a B plus on. And it shattered him. So he came to my office to vent, and of course I'm like, "Come on in." And I'm learning what's going on, and he says, "I got a B plus, and I just don't understand. This doesn't make sense." And I just asked him one question. I said, "What did you do wrong?" And he froze, and he couldn't tell me. And I said, "Well, shouldn't we focus on that?" Like, maybe you did something wrong, and you should figure that out so that you don't do it again, and we learn. So it's crazy how, in society there are these grades, and it's like A, B, C, but they have meaning. But you can't see past the fact that you got a B plus to learn why. It's just, I'm stuck that I got a B plus. So it's crazy how things happen. But I empathize because I made A's in college and stuff like that, and I never wanted a B. And when I got one, I was like destroyed. I'm like, no, I don't want this B. What are we doing? So totally understand that. Okay, let's pivot to West Point.
Yes.
Now tell me,
Yes.
why West Point? You could have
Yes.
gone any school, I'm sure,
Uh,
and
mhm,
gotten in because you got into
mhm.
West Point. Why did you choose to do that?
My mom had signed me up for SLE, when I was in high school. And I remember when the letter came in the mail that I know there's like an application process for SLE, and then you get a letter or an email saying you got into SLE. And she only had me open the letter that said I got in. She didn't tell me that she, submitted my application for me. So, and when I got the letter and it said West Point at the top and it was addressed to me, I did not know what West Point was. Again, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. I know some people have, you know, uncles and brothers and great grandfather and grandpa who, went to West Point. And so I had classmates who said, well, I just knew I was going to go to West Point because 5 generations went. And that was not the case for my family. My dad was the first officer in our family and he went to OCS. So when I think about, West Point and after I learned more about it, I was completely, I had no idea. Everything that I had taken in from YouTube, the website, was what I believed about West Point, and then I got this letter. I had done my research and I said, okay, yeah, well, I got in, so I might as well give it a shot. And when I went to SLE, my parents we drove from Michigan to West Point, New York. And I just, from like the first day, I was in awe. Like I just felt like there was something so special about it. And everything that I loved about my mom and my dad and like their leadership and their like professionalism and just I remember like bring your kid to work day. And my dad would bring my sister and I to his office. And at the time he was a company commander. And I would go with him and I just saw the way that like soldiers interacted with my dad. It wasn't like just because he was their boss. It was like some of these people looked to him as a father figure. And I remember seeing that at like 8 years old. And that really had a large impression on me. Because again, like that was the household that I grew up in. A lot of the values, like the Army values, a lot of the things, accountability. I remember like being in first grade, second grade, and they would making a list on the whiteboard about, what are things that we want to have in our classroom? How do we want to treat each other? And I'm talking about accountability, and they're like, all right, Alma. And so for me, it was like that was those were some of the first things I remember about, being in a team and like being in a large group of people. And that mattered a lot to me. And so to see that kind of like being a motif of what like
Mhm.
my college experience could be. And I also knew that like I didn't want a typical, I'm just going to go to Michigan State like the rest of my friends. Notice on Michigan State. However, I had just that itch for something different and couldn't put a finger on that until here I am at SLE, going into my senior year of high school and I'm like that's it. And so that kind of just put all the pieces together in my mind of combining like the service aspect that I really was itching for and had a lot of different opportunities to be a part of, like in my community. I did a lot of nonprofit work in high school. And then also just this idea of like, I've always been very like STEM and education focused in my life. And so I just felt like it was like the perfect combination.
Wow. So would you say that when you walked the grounds of West Point, it felt like home, or did you want it to become home?
That's a really good question. I mean, I just felt like I knew I knew a couple things from, like, the first 24 hours there. I knew that I was gonna be challenged, but it almost was like that excited me. Like, that idea of, like, I think there's, like, a competitive aspect in at West Point that I really just, like, liked, and then also the aspect of, like, the cream will just rise to the top. I don't know where I
All the
fall in that
time.
cream, but I wanna see where I
Yeah,
fall.
yeah,
If I really, and I remember going back to my hometown, people saying, "Oh, no, Alma, you can't do that. I don't think you can go to West Point. I can't see you doing that." And I just thought the cream is gonna rise to the top, and I wanna see how I shake out.
yeah, no,
I'm so serious because that's
yeah,
how I was raised,
yep,
never shy away from a challenge. And if you say I'm this, well then let's see it.
yeah, go
Like
do it.
let's see it.
Let's see
Let's do
about it, yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I absolutely love that. So I really appreciate your tenacity. I just got to say that. I really do appreciate your tenacity, and I'm witnessing. I'm getting some goosebumps talking to you about, just how you were raised and brought up, and how you are enacting those values on a day to day. I got 3 kids,
Yeah.
so you're gonna give me some advice right this
There you go.
second. You're gonna
Yeah.
tell me what I want you to do is tell me one thing
Mhm.
that your parents did for you that changed your life. What do I need to do?
Oh my goodness. It's funny because I hear my parents get asked this question about me. They're like, "Man, like like I'm about to have my second kid. I don't know what to do," like something like that, or like, "What advice do you have?" But I feel like just from my perspective, when I look at my parents and I look at how they raised me, like one thing that I have witnessed, and also like for the past year of my life, I was in a lot of schools. Traveling and speaking to students in from elementary, middle school, high school, all different parts of the country, all different, blue state, red state, like everywhere, everything in between, socioeconomic status, opportunity, things like that. And when I, look at kids and then I look at how my parents raised me, one thing that they never shied away from doing is like giving me the hard truth. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you think that you gave your all, and I'm here to tell you in the car after you just lost your basketball game that that was piss poor effort, And sometimes I
Yes.
need to hear that. But
Yes.
I feel
I love
like
it.
hearing those hard truths and being able to get comfortable in hearing those about yourself and like things that you could have done better. Um, you don't have to do it in a malicious way, but really I think that's tough love. And because I got that, I seek that out. And I have found not just my parents, but I have found mentors um who I'm like, give it to me straight. Like I'm in between a rock and a hard place and I really want to know, like, am I missing is there a blind spot that I'm not seeing? Or is there something that you would advise? Or like what language should I use and what tone should I use when contemplating this thing? Like I think that is single-handedly one of the best gifts that my parents could have given me,
Yeah.
is the ability to appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm aligned. I call it get clear. It's clarity. You're searching, you're striving to get clear in all ways.
Yes.
Like, what am I doing? What can I do better? How can I maneuver this differently? What are you seeing that I'm not? What are my blind spots? All that stuff really matters. So I'll tell you a quick story. So last year, Ezekiel, my oldest son, we put him in. He's been wrestling. We put
Mhm.
him in flag football because he loves flag football, or he loves football. So Jordan, my wife and I were talking about what was appropriate because of tackling and all that kind of stuff. So we was like, all right, let's introduce him first to flag football, and we take him out there. He's 6.5, and I mean, I was so disappointed. He was good at the sport. He was picking it up really quickly. But the coaches were just everyone gets a trophy, no one does anything wrong, and it was coddling. And I
Yes.
said, "Oh my gosh, that is so misaligned with our parenting principles.
Mhm.
Like, we don't coddle, we tell our children the truth. If they mess up, we're talking to them about things that they can do better." We've been talking to them like they've been 21 since they've been,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
1, and, everybody meets our kids, they're like, "Oh, they have such strong vocabularies, and this is why."
Yeah.
Um, so
Ye
now we pivoted and we put him on this tackling team. So now he's playing football this year, and the coaches are so impressed with his ability to grit things out. Like, he doesn't
Right.
cry,
Mhm.
he doesn't quit, and they
Mhm.
put him in all of the hardest and demanding positions, and we're still like just driving him and saying, "Hey, you can get better. Here's practice, do more." And sometimes I think, is this unhealthy? How is he gonna cope with, other things in life? And
Right.
I'm, skeptical about some of that, but
Mhm.
he's a tough kid. He's a
Mhm.
tough kid, but I totally understand, like, being hard on your kids is important, and I think
Mhm.
you're a product,
Yes.
absolute product. So you look at all the things that you've accomplished, all the things that you're currently doing, it sounds like you're attributing all of this stuff to what came from home.
Yes, very much so. But I also think I know you had mentioned like, is this too hard? Like, are we giving? But I feel like because my parents gave me the hard truths, my mom would also do this thing with, okay, and tell me what did I do good today? What can I do to be a better parent? And so it created this relationship where it's not just like keep going, keep going, keep going. No, no, no excuses. Keep going, keep going. It was like, okay, and I am I think of parents as like you're like a life coach,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
bringing someone through life and then you're setting them free. And so it's like you have to also have that two-way street of, fostering, criticism and also helping each other grow as people because I remember doing that 6, 7, 8 years old where it was just we would take time, I'd read my story, go to bed, and just say, here's what you did good, here's what we can work on, and what can I do good, and what can I work on, things like that. And that was really, really beautiful. And that gave me a lot of confidence also to be um to think critically of myself, to better myself, not, to demean and, bring yourself down, but have that self talk within yourself about how you perform and how others perform. Because I think one thing that can be really hard is, um, like, I remember just in like group projects or even at West Point, like when you have to give peer feedback and it's like, oh, well, you did great. I don't want to say anything. And it's
Yeah.
like sometimes you have to have that ability to think critically about yourself and others, and give criticism in a productive, meaningful manner.
Right. Right on.
Yeah.
By the way, the whole peer thing, gets me. I just don't think we frame it right,
Mhm.
but not to get into the semantics.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta say, "Hey, would you go to war with this person or not?" You and then give me feedback based on that.
Mhm.
So tell us, Alma, tell us, what was the number one struggle for you at West Point? The reason
Yes.
I asked this question is because every person that goes through and walk through to the long gray line struggles with something,
Yes.
and they deal with it inside the cabin, or they take it with them outside and they're still dealing with it. Like, what
Right.
was it?
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind, like of just like struggles, but I think like throughout my time at West Point, like I had to realize that I think we've had this conversation when I was a cadet of like you either take the red pill or you take the blue pill.
Mm,
And some people never some people say, "Well, I never made that choice, so I just got through and, I'm here now." But again, going back to how I was raised, I do think that there is a definitive point where you choose how you're gonna treat your time at the academy. Am I just gonna get by or am I gonna push myself? And I think, like, there's pros and cons to both of those. But again, how I was raised and like a fundamental belief of mine is like life is what you put into it.
right.
And I think a lot about my family and like my upbringing of like, I'm not gonna, there's so many people before me have done so many incredible things in times where things were not easy for them. Who am I to get an opportunity like this and just throw it away and say, well, I'm just gonna get by?
Yeah.
And I think about that, every day. And sometimes like that's like my wake up call of like, am I doing enough? Am I whatever? So when I think of, I have to frame it like that first because I think like in the challenges that I faced, like it's because I was choosing to be challenged. But
You you
then
you
I would
you
also,
chose the challenge. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
but then I would also say that like something that was just hard was like people aren't going to understand that, which is again part of you're gonna choose the red pill or the blue pill. Like you could just choose to part of choosing the whichever one. It's like people are not gonna understand that. People are gonna ask, well, why? Or like, that's lame. It's like weird to try. But again, like I am a
Yeah.
firm believer my whole life, 23 years, there hasn't been a point where I thought, well, not everyone else is doing it, so I'm not going to. Like that's not how I've chosen to live my life. And sometimes it's taken like pep talks from mentors to be like, okay, like this is again, you're gonna have to make that choice. Or like live a life where everyone's gonna understand and no one's gonna say anything bad about you. You're just gonna be, go with the flow.
Hello.
You're
Yeah.
gonna choose again in your life to do something that's hard, that is gonna be criticized, that is gonna put you out there. The choice is yours, but and sometimes again, like having people in your corner who are gonna put it in terms like that very clearly and bluntly, but then also like be there for you when you choose to make that choice. Like, okay, I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna learn about myself. I'm gonna grow. Um, to help you in that growth. Like, how do you continue to like see these obstacles or see these things that are hard and frame them in your mind and choose to grow from them? So I would say that was a challenge that I had.
Yeah. So it
Mhm.
sounds, I'm extrapolating from this point
Mhm.
that the biggest difficulty was the peer scrutiny.
Yes, I feel like that
Yeah,
was really hard because again, like, I you know, when I look back at it, like, it's that is an aspect of life.
yeah,
I don't think
100%.
you never really escape, but I do think that it teaches you a lot. And I'm grateful for that because again, like being at a place like Stanford and like being around people who I one of the first things that I realized amongst my friend group is like we can all pinpoint to that idea of like peer scrutiny or a time where like we were going for something or we felt like we were the black sheep in an environment, but that taught us something. And like here we are now, and now we're all together and we're all again trying to grow and become and solve problems and think about issues critically. So I think it breeds something in you, but you will meet other people eventually who are after the same thing and have been bred the same way that you have.
Yep. No, that's beautiful. Yeah. No, no. And I think that challenge that you pointed out will be a constant no matter what you do, and you'll
Mhm.
continue to experience it. You're
Yes.
probably experiencing the same thing right now wherever you are. So that's hard. I do know the culture at West Point was, you know, the red blue pill dynamic, but it was either it was cool to care, it was cool not to care or cool to care. So you either fit on the left or the right, and
Mm,
that was the pill. But it was weird to me that a group of people would come to the academy to become the best version of themselves, but then figure out ways to say it's cool not to care. It is just weird how peers come into a circle and figure out ways to get comfortable because of the difficulties associated with
mhm,
the institution. And I think that's a coping mechanism. It's like, no, it's cool not to care. So we're the kids over here that we're not gonna care because we got to
mm.
cope with, but we're better. Yeah, we're really good. So we're gonna scrutinize everybody over there who's like the tryhards, and it's
Yeah,
those people are just trying to be the best version of themselves.
right. But then I think about it, and I think about it, and I remember meeting my family after like literally right after I tossed my hat up in the air. And I'm looking at my mom and I'm looking at my dad. My dad, first officer in our family, a long lineage of enlisted soldiers. I mean, my dad, when he went to Iraq, he had a photo of people way, way down in our family lineage who were drafted.
Mm,
And here he is, at the time he was a major, the first officer in our family. I look at my mom, who grew up from very, 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 very humble beginnings. I remember she went to Saginaw Valley State University to get her master's when my dad was deployed while also working a full time job. And here I am, a product of these two individuals, you know, graduating the top 5% of my class at West Point, and now I'm at Stanford University on a full ride scholarship.
heck
I'm
yeah.
not saying that there's a right way or a wrong way to go about going to West Point. But I do believe that to my core, there is something so special about making endeavors in your life or choices in your life deeply personal because I'm not going to waste the opportunity, whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever. I'm not going to waste the opportunity that I have here, because you think it's weird to try. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at
Yeah,
something that my
right,
ancestors couldn't even dream of, you
right.
know? I'm not gonna waste that opportunity because you don't think it's cool
Yeah,
to try.
right, right. Like you're gonna waste your bandwidth dealing with somebody else's insecurities or things that they are struggling with. No, right
Yes.
on.
Mm.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That I think that's helpful. That's
Yes.
really helpful. I'm glad we talked about that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you competed for the Knight-Hennessy,
Mhm.
scholarship at West Point,
Yes.
and I think that's a process. You go through your Cal year and then your first year, and then you go to your interviews. Um, what was the lesson from that experience? Like,
Yes.
what was challenging? How'd you fight through it, and what'd you
Yes.
take out of it?
So, I remember, you go through the process your Cal year and they say, okay, you get kind of to the end of the class or to the program and they say, okay, if you enjoyed this or you think you want to put yourself through another series of this, on a deeper level, then your first year, we'll give a handful of you the opportunity to compete for these scholarships and go through that process. But we're not going to make you, we can tell you that we think you're going to be competitive. But if you say, this was great, I'm glad I learned the lessons, this isn't for me, no one's going to drag you by the ear and say, no, you got to apply. And so I remember they kind of gave us that choice. And I went to a mentor of mine who was in the program and I said, hey, sir, this has been great. It's awesome that you all give people this opportunity, but I just don't know if I'm cut out for this. I don't know if I'm going to be doing myself a disservice by going through this process all over again and doing this soul searching and writing these statements and going through all this stuff. And then, I get to the end, they say, sorry, I didn't know if I was cut out to feel that because I knew how much work and effort and time it takes to go through that process. And then hearing no is pretty soul crushing. At least it was for me at the time. And so I thought, let me just cope with this the best way I can and say, I'll tell you no before we even get to that point. And then he kind of came back and said, I hear you and thank you for your feedback. But also, why would you be the first person to say no to yourself? Why
Yeah,
would you cut it off
self-selecting.
here?
Yeah. Right.
You know? And I was like, you got a point. And I think, I talked to him about it and he gave me his, very valid advice. And then I talked to another mentor of mine and she echoed a very similar idea of, what do you have to lose? You're playing with the house's money. They're giving you an opportunity to put your name in the hat for something that very few people will ever get the chance to apply for. And I get it, the statistics and the application rate or this application acceptance rate and all this stuff can kind of float through your head. And myself as a numbers person, that's exactly where I went. It's like, how many people apply? How many people make it? But at the same time, they both of them produced very valid points of, y- you have nothing to lose,
Right.
and for me, I at that time I had kind of accepted, I'm just going to graduate and I'm going to pick my post off the whiteboard when it gets that time. And I am perfectly fine with that outcome. But then, as they're saying, like, you have nothing to lose and you should put your name in the hat and really give it a solid effort and learn from that experience. I kind of heard him out. And so the application time came and was accepted for like I could apply to Rhodes, Knight-Hennessy, and I think one other. And Rhodes was first. That was like the first deadline. It comes up really quick. It's like within the first 60 days, at
Right.
least as what it felt like. And so you're going through this process, kind of like this sprint, and then you hit submit. And then there's the interview process of, we boiled down from X amount of applicants to this many, and we're going to ask you to interview. And I remember I didn't get an interview. And it's very weird because you get this email like very suddenly. There is no like expect an email on X date. It's just like you're in the middle of doing a problem set and something pops up in your inbox and it's like, sorry, maybe try later. And it was like, that was it. It felt like that was it, like you just pour all this time, but you
No
talk
handshake. You guys could have
right.
come in shaking my hand or something.
No, that was it. You get the automated email,
Yeah.
in your inbox, and you talk about lessons. What did that experience teach you as a lesson? Like, for me, I was ready for the experience to be done that night. I was like, all right, if Rose doesn't want me, I think I'm good. I need to get an interview, so we can cut it right now. I told y'all to start. I told y'all how I felt about this, and
I
here we
told
go.
y'all, why y'all make me do this?
And I remember
Yeah.
I cried and I called my mom, I called my dad, and I was like, I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. And my mom was like, well, neither am I, And here we are, So it's like if the trusted opinions that I had in my life were telling me, being a Rhodes Scholar is not going to define Alma Cooper. What's going to define you is how you respond. Like, are you going to count
Oh,
yourself
there
out
you
for,
go.
and then
Yeah.
it was, this no is mutually exclusive from all the other no's and all the other yeses that you can hear. And I was like, at that point, it became personal because I was like, I was on a hunt to prove myself right that one no cannot stop you from hearing the other yeses that are gonna come in your life. And so I talked to a mentor because I had people who were coming up to me, mentors who were like, "Hey, I heard, I know they got the interviews coming out. Let me know if you want to prep." And I'm like, I didn't get an interview. And so they
Yeah.
were like crushed for me. And I had kind of at that point made it personal where I was like, I'm gonna keep going. Like I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna see this all the way through because again, like don't be the first person to say no to yourself. And this no is mutually exclusive from what you could hear. And then I really dove deep in the Knight-Hennessy scholarship process. Like I made it so personal that I devoted like every day. I made a vision board and I put a Stanford acceptance letter on it. I had done the research on the scholarship. I had really identified pieces of myself that I wanted to put on paper. And then, boom, you get that email again a couple months after the submission date. And it's like, I thought it was auto generated. I thought it was kind of just like a, hey, thanks for applying. You'll hear from us soon. And then clicked on it and I started reading it. It was talking about, you've made it to the top 500. I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm talking about. But also, at that point, I had put it in my mind that I cannot be tied to an outcome. Like, this has to be a values driven endeavor because there's also I recognize that there's a lot of luck involved in this process.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, at that point it was, deeply personal. But it was also I'd also reframe my outlook on the process.
You know, Alma, I just want to take a moment of silence.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a moment of silence. No, seriously, there's so much that we can unpack from this
Mhm.
that I just want to bring to the surface. Starting with the fact that you were uncertain. Like
Yes,
uncertainty is a part of the process of pushing yourself toward the seemingly impossible. Yeah. So what we got to deal with the uncertainty too. Have mentors. You
yes.
gotta have your board of directors, people
Mhm.
that you can rely on and talk to that's gonna make you see things differently,
Yes,
particularly when you are hard on self and you're like,
yes,
"Ah, I'm gonna self-select
yes.
out." And then to fall in love with the process.
Mhm.
Like, it's a process. You said values driven, and how important failure is to success. Like,
Yes,
you said it, you said, "I went all in," like,
yes.
maybe I'm thinking like, well, if Alma would have put in that same energy,
Mhm.
not that you didn't, but it was
Right.
different energy. It
It
was
was
different
different.
energy
It was
that came
different.
from that failure, and you got selected for Knight Hennessy, so I'm thinking like, well, Alma could have been a Rhodes Scholar
Right.
but
Yeah.
you needed that failure. You
Yes, I
needed that
did.
thing to trigger, like,
Yes.
"You know what? No, I can go even harder."
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Moment of silence.
Moment of silence. Because
No,
truly,
that's
like,
good.
I
Yeah.
like, even now, I will get phone calls, or I'll get messages, or I'll get sent, "Hey, this cadet is in a similar situation and, needs consoling to get back up and, go again." And, like, I take that as single-handedly, like, one of the greatest moments that I could have had. Like, I feel like, in math, we talk about inflection points where, like, the gradient changes, and that was truly an inflection point in my life. Not just, okay, well, I lost this one, but I won, and so it's fine. It's like, no, if you take the time to realize the change in emotions and tone and energy, like you said, like that is truly there's me before that and me after that, and how I view opportunity and failure and like response to challenge. Um, so yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. I'm
Thank
super
you.
proud of you for that.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so a few more things I wanna unpack here because 'cause we're
Yes.
coming up on the hour, but we
Yes.
gotta hit a few more
Yeah.
things. You were the queen of beast.
Hmm.
Correct, okay? Um, it's important that we explain what that is, like, you compete against your peers to lead the incoming class. And that class at the time was that 26
26.
or
Mhm.
okay, 2020. They're graduating next
I
year.
know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
brought 'em
That's
in.
crazy.
You
Yeah.
know what they're probably saying? They're probably like, "Oh, our commander is Miss USA."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So are you going to graduation, by the way? You gotta go.
I know, I feel like
You
I
gotta
should.
go.
Yeah, but we'll see.
I'm putting
I
this
gotta
on your
graduate
calendar.
myself. I gotta graduate from Stanford, so
Yeah. No,
yeah,
that's true, that's true.
yeah.
That will be awesome if you did
Yeah,
that.
it's so cool. Mhm.
But yeah, so you were the queen of beasts, like, what did you like, you're molding the minds of these, impressionable cadets that don't have any true understanding of what they're getting themselves into, and the first person they meet of, like, stature or of leadership, and you were quite motivational because I saw you out there. What was, like, your vision? Like, how did you shape your vision, and how the magnitude of that
Mhm,
responsibility, like,
mhm.
how did that fall on you?
Yeah, I feel like even now, like, when I look back, I'm like, I think it's my boyfriend went to Santa Clara University, and so, like, talking to him about, like, his experience in, like, leadership and, like, my experience in, like, leadership, it's crazy just the magnitude of people that West Point gives students the opportunity to, like, lead. Like, I mean, the largest group I think my boyfriend really was a part of or had a leadership in, as a senior was his fraternity, which is not, 1,800. It's not that big.
Yeah.
So it to me is I even now, like I am grateful that each year cadets, constantly get the chance to evolve and grow and think about that size and scope and that magnitude of people, but like be mentored in each of those roles. So that's one thing that I do think of still to this day of like, wow, that is really incredible that people get that opportunity every year. Um, but I would say for me, like in particular, just that responsibility, like I one, like it was not a light thing that I took of
Mm.
onto myself. And you talked about mentors. That was one thing that I remember very heavily relying on mentors in my life was just to contemplate and think about challenges that I faced and like my response and how to work with a team of like dynamic classmates and then also lead students who are coming in and like looking to you all as the guiders and like the coaches and the mentors. And I think that is something that was very hard, but also like as someone who seeks out challenge, like I couldn't ask for a better challenge because it's real life. Like this is real life and it's growing and it's changing and there's a lot going on. Like I think about how in Beast 2, you're out in the field and you're doing the live fire and you're doing, we're throwing grenades and we're just like there's constantly something that has like high stakes every single day. And again, not taking that lightly. So for me, I think one thing that I really, really learned was the fact that like in the fact that everyone's going to find challenge at West Point, people are going to respond to that challenge differently.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe that's something that I had to learn about my peers, about incoming cadets, is that, in the face of challenge, like not everyone's gonna have that, okay, let's go. We got this. We're just gonna go. Some people are gonna need a moment. Some people are gonna actually go back and forth on that red and blue pill choice. I
Mhm.
don't want to try. I'm okay with getting by. And I feel like I really, really internalized learning that lesson from other people and their response to being in challenge because I think that's something that everyone is going to face, especially in work. In a work environment, some people are really going to choose, I'm just gonna do what I'm told, and I'm not gonna ask for any other, uh, initiatives or
Right.
opportunity challenge. But I think in learning to work with people who don't have maybe the same mindset and perspective on work or challenge as you learn far more than being in an environment where it's like everyone's a go-getter. Everybody wants to, go 100 miles per hour. When you're in an environment with different modes and different perspectives, you learn far more.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Yeah, because
Mhm.
it stretches
Yes.
it's like, this is different, and it's stretching my
Yes.
ability to think this different way.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. No, that's good. I love
Mhm.
that. I love
Mhm.
that. So after B's, you go back to the Corps for the AY, you become a leader in the Corps, and then you are getting ready for graduation, and you commission Intel, right? You're an Intel officer.
Yes.
Why'd you choose Intel?
I chose Intel because I feel like just with the math and the data science and, like, the analytical aspect of what I enjoy, like, I love being given, like, a data set, for example, and there's, 100 variables, and we gotta boil it down to 3, and we wanna build this model to predict X. Like, just having to do, like, exploratory, like, data analytics and then pinpoint what, is valuable and, like, consult our stakeholders and then go back to the data set, like, that process of, observation, analysis, recommendation, like, I fell in love with that in academia, and I felt like there were similar ties to that in Intel at various levels. And so I was like, "Well, I think this could be a good fit."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good, and, you haven't done BOLIC yet, so you
No, not
haven't okay, got it.
mhm.
Okay, so, commissioned, and then you go to Stanford. We talked a little bit about Stanford. I do wanna know what inspired you to start cheering there, but before
Yes.
we do that,
Yes.
I wanna talk just because of timing here, I wanna talk a little bit about, winning Miss USA.
Mhm. Mhm.
To me, that is like that's a huge life-changing event, and
Yes.
I just remember seeing this picture of you, and you're like
Yeah, literally,
just
like
a picture, like, you're like, "What? Like, what are we saying? This happened?"
literally.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Mm.
could you just tell us a little bit about that, like, whole
Yeah.
experience and where you're at and how you're feeling? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think about this. I mean, I'm on vacation right now, but I do think about this in on my runs. I think about it, you know, just on I run a lot, so a lot of times I think about this on my runs. It's a very, like, reflective moment for me because I remember I spoke at a high school when I was in USEREC, and I was speaking at 3 schools, and I got to this last school, and, I mean, I was in North Carolina, and they put the video up of when I won, and I mean, I know it's out there. Sometimes I'll see it if, like, a pageant fan page will post it or something like that, um, but they had put it up on for this whole auditorium. I was getting ready to speak, they had put it up as part of my introduction, and I watched that moment and I got emotional because I just think about what that moment in history kind of meant to me. Um and I'm in an auditorium full of young students, and I'm getting ready to talk to them about the army and service and going to West Point, all these things. But they're seeing me in a moment where, in my personal time I said, I just want to chase this dream and I want to see where the chips fall, and I won. And it's not the fact, "Oh, you're the winner." It's the fact that there's a piece of me that when I was that age, I needed to see that was possible.
Yeah. And from moving forward here for the rest of your life, you're a vessel, right? You're a vessel that will carry other people through their hardship and just giving them a new way of looking at adversity and pushing through it. So yeah, well, on behalf of the world, thank you for doing that. And thank you for, I mean, all of it's like about what you do for other people at this point, like you join the military, you want to serve your nation, you want to protect your nation, and you sacrifice self to do that. I mean, even I can't imagine so I do bodybuilding. I can't imagine pageantry and doing like I mean, there are just so much things you're preparing for, you're busy, you're studying for. Like it is a holistic thing that you go through. On top of that, you're at Stanford, you're studying, cheering, and then on top of that, you're dealing with like scrutiny because this is like a new terrain. You're the first woman in the army to do it. It's been an awesome time here on this podcast. I wish you had another 2 hours, because I could just ask you a lot more questions, and I know there's a lot of growth that will come from listening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you well on all of your endeavors, and of course, we'll be in contact.